what your procrastination actually means. Productivity gurus have you believe procrastination makes you lazy when it's actually much deeper and has nothing to do with laziness. In today's hustle-filled culture, productivity gurus or anyone dipping their toes into productivity is fully convinced that if you're procrastinating, it means you're lazy. It makes sense since for decades now, we are convinced that entrepreneurs that are making millions or billions of dollars are at the pinnacle of peak productivity. After all, they are constantly working and have achieved so much with how much wealth they have accumulated. At that point, we wished we were like them, hustling hard and getting everything done and feeling accomplished at the end of the day. This is on top of most productivity gurus pushing the idea that you have to be hustling hard and working as much as you can, only hinting from time to time that taking breaks is fine so long as you leverage them to get back to work not long after. Our culture is revolving around this. However, the reality is so many of us still procrastinate. Projects in the back of your mind that you want to do that you haven't started. Or maybe there is an important task that you should be working on right now, but you've decided to do it later. Or maybe you don't have the luxury of doing it all due to other commitments. Whatever the case may be, we procrastinate for all kinds of reasons. But this environment easily makes us think that we are lazy workers and that procrastination is a terrible thing that must be purged from our systems. But let me ask you this. Are you truly lazy if the task, project, or undertaking that you are trying to do demands that you be focused, prepared, and detail-oriented? Productivity gurus have believed that it's just another form of laziness, when in reality it has nothing to do with it. In fact, it has a lot to do with your emotions. According to Fuchsia Siros, psychology professor at the University of Sheffield, it doesn't make any logical sense that you or I would partake in something when we know for a fact it'll have negative consequences, such as procrastination. It's for this reason that Siros says something like procrastination is an irrational action that we partake in from a work standpoint. The reality is that when we are dealing with chronic procrastination, the issue is on an emotional level. That we are faced with negative moods around a task and we're not able to handle it at all. Your mood is the biggest factor when it comes to how much and how often you procrastinate. In one study that Sirius, along with Tim Peichel of Ottawa's Carleton University, discovered that procrastination is the primary of short-term mood repair over the long-term pursuit of intended actions. In other words, we procrastinate as a means of repairing our mood for the task despite the fact that we want to see a task through and completed. With that in mind, the reason you are avoiding a particular task can be boiled down to two key reasons. Either you dislike the task for whatever reason, or you have negative feelings tied to that task that come up whenever you are doing it. Negative emotions can be things like anxiety, insecurity, or even guilt. These prompt us to opt to procrastinate rather than to work through them. Example of this at work is, say you're entrusted with a presentation that you need to do in the next few days for work. You might be approaching the tasks you need to do for that with self-doubt or a sense of dread. If that is the case, those emotions may stem from you thinking from the start that you're lacking presentation or oral skills, or that you're not qualified to do this at all. There is a multitude of reasons for those emotions coming up, but the idea is there is a root belief that you are holding that this task reminds you of. That happens to be enough to get you to procrastinate on the task. Productivity gurus will have you believe that in order to overcome procrastination, you need to buy their productivity manual or course or download one of their many schedulers or productivity apps available. The courses and manuals wouldn't provide much substance though, as they would just expand on ideas and details that they outline in many articles that you can find online. And the apps themselves aren't going to do much better on their own, even if you're using them religiously. While apps are helpful, they are complementary to the primary solution of handling procrastination. And what is that primary solution? Manage your emotions in new and better ways. What this looks like in practice is the following. First, identify your moods that you experience around any and all tasks. Second, consider practicing self-compassion or self-forgiveness. Third, tap into your internal motivation and some external to bring your mood up and to tackle the task. This method I found to be most helpful, as this is what got me to have the motivation to handle calling people to collect employment insurance debt on behalf of the Canada Revenue Agency. For the first month, I had issues with calling people and would avoid the phone entirely, shadowing someone else who was doing all the phone calls herself. After the first month, I found my motivation and got to handle several hundred debtors and dealt with the workload faster than most of my colleagues. Don't be so quick to label yourself as lazy if you've been putting off a task for weeks. The reality is you're not lazy at all, and if you were, you wouldn't have desired to complete any task at all. This is of course on top of the fact you wouldn't have made it this far in the video if you were truly lazy.